This is part 98 of ASP.NET MVC tutorial. In this video, we'll discuss what's JavaScript minification. JavaScript minification is the process of reducing the size of JavaScript file by removing comments, extra white spaces, new line characters, and by using shorter variable names. Let's understand the process of JavaScript minification with an example. Here I have an ASP.NET MVC4 application. Let's add a controller and let's call it home controller. And now let's add index view. This view is going to be very straightforward. This view is going to ask the user to enter a number, and then this view with the help of JavaScript is going to check whether if that entered number is even or odd. So for the user to enter a number, we need a text box. So input type equals text, and let's give this text box an ID. So txt number, and then let's include a button. So input type equals button, and let's give it an ID. Let's call this btn submit, and the value on the button is going to be submit. Okay, so let's run this. So at this point we should have an interface to enter a number. Okay, so user enters a number, and then once he clicks the submit button, we need to check whether if that entered number is even or odd. And we're going to do that using jQuery. So we need to reference jQuery file on this view. So within the scripts, I have this jQuery file. Let me drag and drop that, and let's fix the source attribute to use tilde in the path. Okay, so we're going to write some JavaScript code here. Script type equals text slash JavaScript. So dollar function. Okay, so the first thing is we need to find this button control, because when we click that button, that's when we need to check whether if the entered number is even or odd. So, and what is the ID of the button? btn submit. So let's copy that, and let's use jQuery ID selector. jQuery ID selector is £. So pound, find the control with ID btn submit, and then when somebody clicks that, execute a function. Okay, so what do we need to do when we click that button? We need to first retrieve the value that is entered within the text box. Okay, so let's use a comment here to make our JavaScript code more readable. So retrieve the number from the text box. Okay, so let's use this ID selector once again. So variable number equals, so what is the ID of our text box? txt number. So from the txt number, retrieve the value. So we are retrieving the value that the user has entered using this val function. And then let's check if the number is divisible by 2. So check if the number is divisible by 2. So variable result equals number mod 2. Okay, so if the result is 0, then we know for sure the number is even, at which point we are going to alert a message. So alert number is even, else alert number is odd. Okay, so very straightforward JavaScript code, but instead of having this JavaScript within the page, let's actually move it to an external file. So let me right click on the scripts folder, add a new item, and we want to add a JScript file, and let's call this custom javascript.js, and click add, and let's copy this piece of JavaScript code into that external file. And let's get rid of the script tag from the view. And then now, since the custom JavaScript is present in an external file, we need to reference that within our view. And let's fix the source attribute to use the tilde symbol. Alright, let's go ahead and run this and see if it actually works. So let's enter 4, click submit, look at that, number is even. Let's enter 5, click submit, number is odd. So it's working. Now, look at this, we have this custom JavaScript file within the scripts folder. Let's actually open this scripts folder in Windows Explorer and look at the size of this custom JavaScript file. Look at the size of the custom JavaScript file. It's 396 bytes, as you can see here. Okay, now if you look at this piece of JavaScript code that we have within this custom JavaScript file, within this piece of code we have, look at this, extra white spaces there. We have new line characters here, and we have comments. And look at the variable names. There are several characters within the variable names. Now let's minify this JavaScript code. And to minify this JavaScript code, there are several tools available on the web. Let's actually go to Google and search using minify JavaScript search term. And look at this, there are several of them. I'm going to get to this jscompressor.com, and all we need to do is paste our JavaScript code here and then click this button. So let's copy our JavaScript code. Okay, let's compress that, and look at this. It has removed the new line characters. It has removed the variable names. It has shortened the variable names. Instead of using, look at that, instead of using number as the variable name, here it says just E. And then look at the result variable. Instead of using result, it is just using T. And look at the comments, they're gone. Okay, so basically it removed the comments, it removed the extra white spaces, it removed the new line characters, and it used shorter variable names. So now let's actually add another JavaScript file, and let's call this custom JavaScript .min.js. And let's actually paste this piece of JavaScript code within this file. And look at this, now the entire JavaScript code is present in a single line. Okay, now within our index view, instead of using the non-minified version, this is the non-minified version. Okay, let's actually open the scripts folder in Windows Explorer and look at this, custom JavaScript that is not minified is 396 bytes, whereas the custom JavaScript which is minified is 178 bytes. So the size is drastically reduced just by removing comments, extra white spaces, new line characters, and by using shorter variable names. So this is what is called as JavaScript minification. Now on our index view, instead of using this non-minified version, let's use this minified version. So let's copy the name of this file and use that version here. And let's run this and see if we get the same functionality as before. So the functionality of this JavaScript code shouldn't be compromised in any way. So if I enter 4, click submit, number is even. If I enter 5, click submit, number is odd. So it's working the same way as it did before. Okay, but then the minified JavaScript file size is greatly reduced. Okay, let's look at some of the questions around JavaScript minification. So what are the advantages of JavaScript minification? As the minified JavaScript files are very small, they will be downloaded much faster and consumes less bandwidth. Search engines like Google considers page loading time as one of the parameters to rank pages. Okay, so obviously the lesser the page loading time, the better they rank in search engines. And obviously, if somebody requests this index view, the JavaScript file needs to be downloaded onto that client machine. From the web server, it needs to be transmitted to the client. And obviously the minified JavaScript files are much smaller in size, so they download much faster, and at the same time they also consumes much less bandwidth. Is any of the functionality lost because of minification? None. And we have seen that in action. We are at the moment using the minified version, but the functionality is exactly similar. Are there any tools available to minify JavaScript? There are loads of them in the internet. What is the difference between jQuery.js and jQuery.min.js? Now, if you create a new MVC application in the scripts folder, you will see several jQuery files. Look at this jQuery. There's a version number 1.7.1, and then .js, and then we have .min.js. So this min.js is the minified version, whereas the one without the word min is the non-minified version. So if you look at this file, you have several comments here, there are new line characters, and the variable names are lengthy, etc. So obviously, if you look at the size of the jQuery file that is not minified, so if you look at this jQuery file, this is 252 kilobytes, whereas the minified one is just 92 kilobytes. Okay, and if you look at the minified version, again look at that, the white spaces are removed, the new line characters are removed, they have used much shorter variable names, etc. As a result, the file size is drastically reduced. Okay, similarly we have unobtrusive Ajax and the minified version of that, jQuery UI and the minified version of that. So jQuery.min.js is the minified version, whereas jQuery.js is the non-minified version. In your production websites, always use minified files as they download faster and consumes less bandwidth. And what is the downside of JavaScript minification? Obviously, they are harder to read and debug. So if you look at this jQuery file, look at the code there. It's definitely difficult to read and difficult to debug. Okay. However, for development and debugging, we can use non-minified versions, and just before deployment, minify and use the minified versions on the production environment. Again, when it comes to debugging, let's say we're using the minified version within our index file, and let's assume there is some problem with the JavaScript code, and then we need to debug. What we can do is, on our development machine, we can reference the non-minified version, debug your application, and then obviously you will find a problem, and then fix that within that script file, and then minify that once again using the minification tools, and then before you deploy the application, reference the minified version within your view. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.